This is Professor Michael Chapman. I'm one of the most experienced IVF doctors in Australia. I believe that an important part that I can contribute is to educate patients in relation to fertility, infertility, and all that involves. These series of podcasts help to educate you. I hope they are helpful to you. If you wish to know more, however, I'm more than happy to have you contact me via email, which is profmchapman@gmail.com, or make an appointment to see me on 9138 4222.
Prof, I have a question from Kimberly, who's live. She asks, is there much success for women who have already had 2 miscarriages?
2 miscarriages is by no means the end of the world. There is absolute hope. The statistics tell us that, and this is on hundreds of thousands of patients. It's not just 2 or 3 patients. This is data from Scandinavia in particular, where they have great medical record keeping. The odds of a miscarriage after 2 previous miscarriages, the odds of another miscarriage is no more than 20 to 30%. In other words, your next pregnancy has a 70 to 80% chance of being successful without any help from anybody. So that's the first thing. It's hard to believe that when you've had 2 miscarriages, there isn't something wrong. But it depends a bit on your age, what I'm about to say, or perhaps I'll describe it in 2 age groups. So what we know is that of all embryos created, a significant percentage are genetically abnormal, but nature usually wipes them out before your missed period happens. And then in the first few days after a period should have come, a delayed period is often an early miscarriage, nature getting rid of these genetic abnormalities. When you get to 6 weeks or so, when we look at the placenta of miscarriages, we find that 60 to 70% of them are nature getting rid of mistakes that they've made. So if the odds are 60 to 70% of miscarriage being chromosomal, and that's a random event, it's not usually related to you, it's just nature getting it wrong, you can see that it is a numbers game, that 1 in 6 pregnancies miscarries when you're 30 years old, and the majority of those, the 60 to 70%, are because of genetic abnormalities, random events. The statistics say that in the next pregnancy, that 1 in 6 holds up. By the 3rd pregnancy, I've said it's more like a 1 in 5, but it's still a very high chance that you will have a genetically normal embryo, which will carry on through.
Prof, Kimberly wants to add that she also has microadenoma and is 32.
Yeah, I provided the microadenoma is well controlled. In other words, the prolactin levels that probably were elevated, which is how they found the microadenoma, provided they're under control, there shouldn't be any change in your miscarriage rate. At 32, I think, well, that's the numbers I was talking about. Every pregnancy has a 1 in 6 chance, which means that 1 in 36 women will have 2 miscarriages. So really quite common to have 2 miscarriages. And based on what I was saying, you know, 1 in 36 times 1 in 5 is whatever that is. So there are 1 in 200 women, let's say, that's pretty close to the number. 1 in 200 women will have 3 miscarriages. But after 2 miscarriages, be optimistic. You know, if you're particularly concerned, then you should be seeing a fertility specialist who's interested in recurrent miscarriage. That's one of my particular interests. There are a series of investigations that are worth doing. The turn-up rate after 2 miscarriages of finding any abnormality with either immune problems, uterine problems, or blood clotting problems, or chromosomal problems, is less than 5%. So after I've done all the tests, I will probably be saying to you, it's all clear, go again, and I'm pretty sure you're going to be fine in your next pregnancy.
But she says a CT scan picked it up and currently take cabergoline under supervision by an endocrinologist.
Yeah. Cabergoline is what is done for high prolactin levels. The CT scan probably was done in response to an elevated prolactin level. It's unusual for a CT scan to randomly be done and pick up a microadenoma if they weren't specifically looking for it. But cabergoline is the right thing, and certainly there's no, it doesn't appear to be any evidence that that taking that changes your miscarriage rate, provided the prolactin levels are under control.
Kimberly also says, have DX PCOS family history of blood disorders, factor V, Leiden, but don't have the defective gene.
Yeah. So, well, sounds like you've had in some of the investigations that I would be doing, and what you're telling me does not influence my optimism that you're going to be fine.
So, Kimberly,
so if you were seeing me, I would probably be saying all I've said to you now, and then my advice would be to call me the clinic the day that you find out you have a positive pregnancy test. We do a pregnancy hormone level, the beta-HCG level, that day or the day after, and then 2 or 3 days later to make sure they're heading in the right direction. I then tend to introduce some hormone support because there is a small group of women in whom miscarriages because of reduced progesterone levels. There are a couple of ways of doing that. The messy way of doing it is to use tablets in the vagina or pessaries. The alternative, which I tend to use, is twice weekly injections of pregnancy hormone to stimulate the ovary to produce more progesterone. I then scan you at 6 weeks to make sure that there's a sac in the right place and that there's an embryo there. We may or may not see a heartbeat at that stage, but the following week or 2 weeks later, we will see a heartbeat, and I'll see you again so I'm seeing you at 6 weeks, 8 weeks, and 10 weeks before I send you off to your local obstetrician. That reassurance that you get by having things closely monitored, I truly believe makes a difference in carrying a pregnancy on.
And don't forget that you can access all the previous episodes by going to our website www.theivfjourney.com and select IVF Journey podcast from the navigation menu.
Thank you for listening.